You are now listening to The Spearsy Spin with your host, Mike Spears.
Hi folks, and welcome to The Spearsy Spin. I am your host, Mike Spears. Today we have several interesting things to talk about. The first thing we'll be talking about is transgenders, and we'll be talking about them. Who are they? What are they? And are they victims, as the Democrats / liberals try to make them? We'll also be talking about Governor Andrew Cuomo, who's the governor of New York State. He's already closed over 13 prisons in the state, and he has been releasing level 1 felons back out on the street. And of course, that has resulted in more crime by these felons. And some of the crimes are absolutely horrid because they involve murder. We'll have our Ronald Reagan with his humor. He'll be there telling us some jokes, the highlight of the program probably. And finally, we'll talk about Obamacare. Is it really finally gone? But what is it being replaced with? And will it work? So the first thing we're going to talk about today is the transgender issue here in the United States. And, you know, we are bringing this up because it does play into politics. And I think before we bring the political end of it in, we need to talk a little bit about the psychology involved with transgenders. And, you know, one of the things that a lot of folks don't know, I don't think, is that, I don't know how many folks who were transgender were either beaten up and in some cases actually murdered because there's this prejudice against transgender people, as there is prejudice against a lot of different folks, including, of course, gays and so on. But that's bad enough as it is. But we know that about 33% of transgenders that are on or I should say in school or college, they tend to receive a lot of harassment, both verbal and physical, because people just have a problem with the transgender role. But that's changing because there's getting to be more and more acceptance of folks that are transgender or gay or whatever, So that's changing a bit. But what we want to look at is we want to talk a little bit about what kind of makes up the transgender folks, and then we'll apply the politics to it. Depending on which mental health person you talk to, I think you're going to get a different answer to this. But some of the psychological talking heads within the country will tell you that transgenders just has to do with sexual orientation, and I don't think that that's probably the way we need to look at that. I mean, that's just me, because basically someone's sex is assigned to them at birth. But if for some reason the person doesn't identify with that, or feels that they were born a female but they're actually a man, that's going to bring in a lot of issues, a lot of personal issues, a lot of soul searching, and it's also going to cause people around them to feel a bit put off. They're not going to understand. It's just a mess sometimes. So when we really talk about sexual orientation, we're talking about a person's, sexual attraction. What are they really attracted to or not attracted to? And we talk about, sexual behavior and emotional attachments. So we have that, and we always go back, it seems like, to when someone's born, because they slap the baby on the butt and they say, Mrs. Jones, you had a nice baby girl, you had a bouncing baby boy. When I was born, they said to my mother, "Congratulations, Mrs. Spears, you have an 8-pound ham." But I digress. So we're here talking about this, and not all transgenders, go the full, the full gamut. In other words, they don't necessarily have the sex change itself. I mean, they, may take hormone therapy to feminize or masculinize their bodies. And that's certainly one thing they do. But for instance, some transgender women, they only show up or present themselves, I guess, as females in a role when they feel that that's when they want to do that, or maybe while they're socializing. While a transgender man, he's going to present as a male. He may or may not have chest surgery, and so the man, he may not take the masculinizing hormones. So there's a big difference in what the talking heads of the country think about gender identity. There's an age in which I think transgender people realize that they don't identify with what sex they had when they were born. So when we talk about people like Caitlyn Jenner and her gender transition, we ask the question, well, isn't it kind of late in life? And the problem there is that some people don't feel comfortable, and they don't want to take the chance of losing who they are to become what they want to become. So sometimes that's why you see folks come out much later in life, especially with transgender issues. So, you bring in now pediatrics, because now the pediatric folks are starting to get more and more into psychology, and they're talking about exploring gender roles and trying to identify and get indicators as to what a child may or may not decide that they want to be. My thing there would be, I would imagine, let's let the child be a child, because we're always going to have time to address other issues, especially if it's a transgender issue. However, it seems like we have people who now more than ever, people, i.e. professionals, that want to jump in there as soon as they see Tommy playing with a Barbie or seeing Susie playing with a dump truck, and want to jump in there. And I don't know. I don't even know what the psychological attributes to providing a line of therapy for that would entail. But I think we need to back off from that. I think we need to let people be who they are. So the other thing that we have here in mental health, of course, is we deal with these books that are called the DSM, which is a diagnostic and statistical manual. And, these are published by the American Psychiatric Association. And it's funny because gender identity disorder, it doesn't seem to even bother to list that anymore as a diagnosis, So now they're referring to this as gender dysphoria. And I'm wondering how that's going to work, gender dysphoria. Because that typically just means that there's a gender identity disorder, and that the person is, distressed or conflicted between, how they were born, man or woman, and who they really are, or who they believe themselves to be. So now you've got the American Psychiatric Association. They're getting involved, and I'm not sure this is good. Look, here's the bottom line. First and foremost, whether someone is transgender, they're gay or asexual, or they are intersexual, look, people are people. And I can tell you that in this country, we worry way too much about what people are doing in their bedrooms at night. And we are in a country where I think we should all assume, until proven different, that we're all Americans. And if we're all Americans, then I think we need this mutual respect to say, okay, this is your life, you're a consenting adult, and you're living with another consenting adult. What you do in your private life or in your bedroom, I don't think we need to know about that, and I don't think we need to put you under a microscope. Again, we worry way too much in this country about what people are doing in their bedrooms, and I know that when we talk about the Bible Belt folks, and I know that there's huge religious overtones that are associated with the LGBT, and I get that. But I think along with that, we have to develop common ground, and the common ground is this. Again, Americans are Americans. If these folks are Americans, they're holding their hand over their heart and saying the Pledge of Allegiance, these are Americans. We need to afford them the same rights and respect that we do anybody else, and go on about our daily lives, and go on about making the country better, and forget these petty differences, because you're never going to change these things, and it's not up to us to change those things. Now, here is where the Democrats come in. When you have a group of people such as transgenders, we're talking about them today, and these folks are in the limelight, and these folks are being attacked, and they are being beaten up, and some of them have been killed, all because of their sexual orientation. So the Democrats, they kind of, and I shouldn't say Democrats, it's more liberals actually, but they get on the boat and say, look, you are a victim, and because you're a victim, we want to help you. Because you're a victim, we need to protect you. Because you're a victim, you'll need to identify with us as a liberal Democrat, and by doing that, we'll become more powerful, and we'll be able to watch out for you and to help you. And that would be wonderful if it were true. But the problem is it isn't true, because they actually hurt minorities by making them victims. Because first of all, these folks are not victims. I mean, obviously the ones that have been mistreated or beaten or, God forbid, killed, certainly they are victims. But they're not political victims. And that is where the left tries to rein in folks, to bring them on board into liberal ideologies through victimization. And that is an issue we have to deal with. And I think now that we have a different president, I think President Trump is going to acknowledge that people are people. And that's it. We don't need to identify, well, let's see, now there's George. Well, now George, he's heterosexual. Yeah. Now, well, there's Mary. No, she's a lesbian. And, well, there's Phyllis, who used to be Phil. She's a transgender. We don't need to do that. We just need to walk around and, well, there's an American, and there's an American, and there's an American, because that's where it's at. And I know the religious right, doesn't follow this, and I get that. But also, if we're going to be religious, shouldn't we also be tolerant within our religion? Doesn't that make sense? I think so. We don't need to create any more problems in this country. So we don't need to start putting walls up. You stay on that side of the wall because you're, gay or you're transgender. We're going to put this wall up. We don't need that. We just need to be who we are, and we need to allow other folks to be who they are. But what's really important is that we as a nation need to come together as one unified group of Americans.
Here's a message to every rapist, domestic abuser, violent criminal thug, and every other monster who preys upon women. Maybe you've heard the stories about millions of us flocking to gun stores and gun ranges for the first time, the second time, and the 100th time. Here's what that means for despicable cowards like you. Your life expectancy just got shorter. Because there's a very good chance your next target will be armed, trained, and ready to exercise her right to choose her life over yours. This is what real empowerment looks like. Millions of American moms, grandmothers, and professional women taking our lives and our families' lives into our own capable hands. I'm the National Rifle Association of America, and I'm freedom's safest place.
Hi, folks. Times we live in today are scary. Religious freedoms under fire, racial divide never more evident, political powers fighting, foreign countries looking to exploit our country, news media reporting unfair on issues, folks searching out the truth. I listen to the news, then I listen to the Spearsy Spin. Mike Spears has experience, education, determination, and grit to get what's going on in our country. Listen to Mike Monday through Friday. I'll listen. Hope you'll be listening too.
We're going to talk now a little bit about Governor Andrew Cuomo, who, as you know, is the governor in New York State. So far, the governor has closed at least 13 prisons, and he expects to close even more. And, I'm sure that this is a money-saving theory that the governor has come up with, and I'm sure that he has good ideas that will help us to possibly save money. Sadly, the folks that are being let out, by and large, many are level 1 felons, which means, they've already done some really bad crimes, and now, sadly, they're out doing more. At the time of this taping, we know that just within the last 2 weeks, there has been a murder in Rochester, just 2 or 3 days ago, of a shopkeeper. A lady ran her liquor store and was beaten to death by a convict that was let out of prison about a week earlier. And we know that 3 weeks ago, a convict who was in prison was let out. He was also a gang member, killed a police officer in California. So, and the list goes on, and we could sit here and do that, but that's not what we're here for with regard to this. What we're here to talk about is we are looking at a strange transition. Now, New York State, believe it or not, is the most liberal state in the nation. And yes, I've heard the argument, no, it's California. No, it's Massachusetts. No, it's New Jersey. Let me set you straight. This is the list. New York State, number 1. California, number 2. Massachusetts, number 3. New Jersey, number 4. Okay, so those are the 4 big ones. But in New York State, we're asking ourselves, why does the governor want to close these prisons, which he's closed 13 already? Actually, I think it might be closer to 16, but we'll go with 13 because that's what we know. So 2 things come to mind. The governor is talking about he wants to leave a legacy. He wants to go down in history as the governor that closed the most prisons. Well, I'm not a governor, but I'm pretty sure that if I was, I wouldn't want my legacy to be, Governor Cuomo, he closed down all them. He closed down all them prisons, I'll betcha. So, what do we want to leave as a legacy as a governor? Well, here's an idea. How about we get out of the red? How about we make New York successful? How about we learn how to make New York business friendly? How about we allow New Yorkers some breathing room with regard to taxes? Because we are the highest taxed state in the nation per capita. And of course you'll have people that are going to debate that, but I live in New York, so I think I know a little bit about it. So the governor is looking at putting all these prisons, and has, out of business. He's looking at releasing these folks onto the street, and there doesn't seem to be any control, because as I understand it, and we've researched this a bit to make sure before, which we do with everything, before we go on the air, we do due diligence. And it's everything we're telling you is correct. So here's the deal. If the governor is doing all this, and now you have level 1 convicts and other levels too coming out, the problem is that their parole officers cannot handle a figure of 39,000 paroled convicts, because there's just not enough parole officers. And so the parole officer can't be everywhere all the time, and now you're going to have that problem. And that is a problem that currently is turning into a big issue. Will it save money? Well, it will, but then again, it won't. Here's why. What we've learned already while the governor is busy closing the prisons is that because he has done it in such a way and at such a hurried pace, the prisoners themselves cannot come out and just, I'm out of prison. I was in there 30 years, but now I'm out, and, I'm just happy and life is great. No, there's a transition period. And the recidivism rate with regard to inmates, especially long-term, is extremely high. And that's even with putting into place avenues for these folks to be involved in that will help to reintegrate them back into society. But we're not doing that. So basically, they're walking out of the doors of the prison, and they're walking past your house at 8 o'clock at night and waving to you, thinking, well, yeah, I'll stop back about midnight. They'll be in bed. Yeah, let's see there. They got a nice clock. I'll take that, and might be some jewelry. And this is beginning to get to be a problem. Now, the Rochester Police Department has already chimed in because a lot of prisoners are coming out of prisons where they originated from Rochester, and now they're back on the street, and the police are already reporting problems. So, does this make sense? I mean, sure, it's a money-saving issue. It's a money-saving program. But is it worth it if you're putting people's lives at risk? I don't know.
Back after these messages.
I know you're watching, so pay attention. You hate my freedom, my religion, and my country. You hate me for speaking my mind. You try to control me with violence and intimidation. You think you can muzzle me with fear? Don't ever confuse me for my politicians or my media. I am an American, free-born and free-bred, and I will call you out for who you are. An Islamic extremist who would kill me for my beliefs. You don't intimidate me. My freedom is more powerful than anything you can possibly do, and I will never, never surrender my rights to your terror. I will say what I think, worship according to my beliefs, and raise my children how I see fit, and I defend it all with the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. I cower to no one, because I am the National Rifle Association of America, and I am freedom's safest place.
Don't miss even one show. Subscribe to the Spearsy Spin now. Click that subscribe button and be sure to also click that bell next to the subscribe button so you'll be notified when we post new videos.
Well, the news coming out of Capitol Hill is now that Obamacare is gone, or is, I guess, slowly dying out. But it appears as though that we're not really getting a clear, concise picture of what's going on with Obamacare, because we hear that, Obamacare isn't totally gone. We're going to repeal and replace certain parts. Some of it will still be there. There are entitlements that were afforded many people through Obamacare, and those entitlements will have to stay. Now, there's also a juggling act going on here, and I don't pretend to know how to write any type of program to address insuring a nation. But my belief is that we have to have a program where folks can afford insurance, and if they are going to be buying insurance, from a carrier, that they have to know what they're getting, and they have to understand any and all the pitfalls. Because insurance, and for those of you who have bought insurance, whether it's car insurance, life insurance, health insurance, whatever, there's a lot of gray area in there that most of us just we don't understand because we're not insurance people. So we really need to look at what we're going to be offered here. I mean, and I'm all for it because I know of several people who've been damaged by the Affordable Care Act. However, with that said, I don't think that we need to villainize President Obama, because I think at the end of the day, he was trying to do a good thing. But like so many other folks, including myself, I don't think that, he was aware, or were the folks that were helping or working or getting paid millions of dollars, because it didn't work. But at least he tried, and it did help some people, but it hurt a whole lot of other people. So I guess my question is, will it work? Well, that's our show for today, folks, and as always, thank you for being with us. I want to also thank a lot of you folks for the kind things that we're hearing. We're getting some good reviews. I know that we're on the Google, we're on the Twitter, the Facebook, and of course the YouTube. And I know that, well, at least I heard this anyway, we're looking at Reddit and iTunes. So we'll see what's going to happen there. Twitcher, is that the thing? I don't know. I don't know this stuff. I don't pretend. I'm just repeating things I think I heard. Twitter, Spotify, I don't know what it is. But at any rate, we're going to be back tomorrow, and we're going to be talking about some interesting things. I don't have the card up here in front of me, but I know you'll like it. Thanks for joining us. Remember, there's only one world. We all gotta live in it. So let's try to do that. See ya.
Thanks for being with us today. Until next time.